Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Inspire Partnership Trust Awards. We're delighted to welcome all of you to this event today. We've got a fantastic day lined up for you. I hope you're all well and you're enjoying the breakfast and the sunshine, and it's not too sticky and clammy, whichever school you're in. We're really pleased to host the event this year, and it's a little bit different from previous years, but hopefully it's going to be a really inspiring day for you all, and also it sets the weekend up in a really positive way for everybody. We've got Amjad Ali coming to speak later on about inclusive practice and his work to support inclusive leadership in schools. And I'm delighted that we've got colleagues here today from the Inspire Partnership, who I'll introduce shortly, to talk about our brand new inclusive education leadership framework, which you will be receiving a copy of today. And we're going to be setting some challenges around that, and hopefully it's going to be a document that really supports your work, whatever stage of leadership you're at, whatever role you have in the partnership. This is a document we've taken care to produce for you, and hopefully gives every single person and child in the partnership an opportunity to celebrate the uniqueness of who they are and their leadership behaviours that support their actions and deeds as part of the Inspire Partnership. So, for those of you who don't know me, and there may be people in the room who don't know me because I've not been around so much this year, my name is Rob Carpenter. I'm the Trust Leader for the Inspire Partnership, and I've been connected with the Trust for over 10 years now. I'll introduce colleagues in a second in terms of their work in relation to the framework, but also which schools they work at. But I just want to say a few words about the importance of leadership in our schools before I do that introduction. And first and foremost, what I want to say to you is, as I said, this is a framework that we've created that will hopefully support every single person in their roles and the work that they do in support of children. It's about who leaders are, it's about what leaders know, and it's about what leaders do. It's something that we want to be tangible. And the reason we've taken time to create this document is because we recognise that sometimes in schools, the narrative of leadership can appear to be quite transactional, or it can be quite process driven. And what we recognise is that real leadership is about human connection, belonging, togetherness, the language that we use with one another to support each other. It's about collaboration in our schools. And we really wanted to try and create something that referenced that made it feel like it was, brought to life. So you're all going to get a copy of this today, and we're setting up the first part of the morning with a conversation about our leadership framework. And I'm delighted that we've got 4 outstanding school leaders with us today. You'll know them all, but I will do intros as we go through. First of all, Lisa Gallagher, who's Deputy Head Teacher at West Thornton Primary School and has done terrific work over the years to ensure that school maintains and exceeds in all manner of ways. Amy Vidovin, the Trust School Improvement Lead, who we've known for a long, long time now, and works across the Trust and is an inspiring school leader, bringing amazing work to all of our schools and ideas. And Amy's been instrumental in leading the development of this framework. Iman Atwal, who I has known for a long time, from a class teacher now through to head teacher at Woodside Primary School. And Iman, I know you've been working with Lisa and Amy in the development of the framework and road testing it and trialling it. And last but not least, Michael Harris, our Trust Inclusion Leader, who also works across the Trust and does amazing work in ensuring that our schools are the very, very best places to learn. So we have the framework. We've been leading some work to develop it, to test it, to trial it. And what we want to do over the next half an hour now is just have a conversation with colleagues about the framework in terms of what you've done, how it's worked, what your thoughts are in terms of its potential. So my first question to the panel is, for those people that haven't seen the framework yet, we're kind of positioning it as not a checklist, it's not a review, it's not a static document, it's a tool for growth and development. And my question is, how do you see this as helping someone, regardless of their role, whether they're working in an office-based role or as a teaching assistant or whether they're a head teacher? How do you see this, regardless of role, as enabling people to feel more confident and empowered in their daily work?
I'll come in there, Rob, and I really want to start with kind of the underlying principle that really kind of underpins this framework, and indeed our professional growth processes across the Inspire partnership as well. And that principle is that everyone is a leader because everyone influences someone. And in terms of what you've asked there, in terms of how colleagues can be confident and empowered in their roles, I think it's that principle that really needs to be deeply understood when engaging with this framework, which, like you say, is not a rigid stick in which to measure anyone by. What's going to come to life through this is the conversation around that. And like I say, that deep understanding of that principle. Every single one of us in this room watching today influences someone, whether it's a child, a group of children, a classroom, a phase, a school, a community. We all influence someone. And that's why in the framework we've included the stages of leadership. So if you go to the back of the framework, you can see the continuum of influence. And what that does, because it starts with stage one, which is self-leadership, that really empowers everyone, no matter what their role, to know we all begin with self. It's that self-leadership that we all need to work on to master, and that's going to be a lifelong journey. And in the framework, you'll see the strands. They're universal. They're leading with kindness. They're leading with integrity. It's showing humility. It's understanding yourself and others. These are universal things for all of us, no matter what role we're in, that we need to master in order to make the biggest impact and the influence, the biggest influence that we can in terms of our role. And what this framework does, it tells you that your daily habits, the way that you emotionally regulate, the way you present yourselves with kindness and compassion, that is leadership. And that matters, and that's what we want to say to everyone here. And I think that's going to really empower colleagues and have confidence that your role, your influence does matter, and it's really important. And, you'll see this continuum. It is in stages. At stage one, self-leadership for all of us, we never leave that behind. We go up through the stages. So stage two, about team leadership, we'll dip in and out of that as our role changes and fluxes. Right to stage five, it's a system leadership. That's a continuum of influence. That doesn't say that someone's impact who's working at stage five in terms of system leadership, like yourself, has any more important of an impact than someone who has a role as an admin assistant, as a support staff, as a head teacher. All of our roles at a human level have, such a great impact. I think of the impact that, any one of us can make on just one child and their family. That impact can be generational, that can transform someone's whole life. And that's what, I really want to say through this framework. It's valuing every single person's impact. And I think that's what we do as a partnership. We really think about collective impact over traditional hierarchy. And there will be different roles, there will be a hierarchy, in some way, but actually it's that collective impact that drives us and, makes that impact. So the leadership framework, it really codifies, like you say, the characteristics of what excellent inclusive educational leadership looks like. What we are, what we know, what we do. These, for all of us, are qualities to develop and refine. So my last point is, we can use this framework as a shared language, as a kind of a structure to really think about having that clarity in terms of what we can do to strengthen ourselves, our own leadership, to challenge ourselves, and to be empowered to move forward in all of our roles.
Thank you, Omi.
I think I can build on that, because where it's a continuum, and stage one, as Amy said, is very much about self-leadership. That's the most critical stage. That's the foundation, because everything else builds on that. And you can't build on that unless you have that self-awareness, but validating, as you said, your internal characteristics and being proactive in ownership of what you do. So this framework, I view it as a mirror to hold yourself up to, not necessarily a stick to measure yourself against. And I think with that self-leadership, no matter what role you may have, whether that's in the office, whether that's premises, whether that's a teacher in front of children, what this framework allows you to do is ask yourself the question, how can I expand my own personal knowledge, behaviours and actions, and therefore my influence where I am right now to take action instead of waiting or seeking permission from someone else. And I think it just empowers all staff, no matter who you may be, to speak up against yourself and against others respectfully and purposefully to come up with practical solutions. And it really enables self-development.
Thank you, Iman. I'm going to move the conversation forward, if it's okay. I just want to say as well, though, in the creation of the framework and the codification of the language you've described in terms of why that's important and the way that becomes shared across our partnership, almost like an artefact, I think that's been built on year through the work that we've seen in our schools. So, you know, the evidence base for this work being successful and why it's so important has also come from the practice that's in your schools, in your schools, in every way, from head teacher through to children's leadership and more. So it's almost like a kind of repository of what we know works and has positive impacts in our communities. We positioned this as the inclusive leadership framework. We deliberately wanted to get that word in there because we recognise that many of our schools have come from positions where they needed to improve or serve communities where there have been, you know, community and inclusive challenges that we wanted to remove those barriers. My second question is or reflection really is, can you share a story, however big or small, of a moment where something simple, it might be an action from a staff member or something you've noticed that's had a big impact on a child or a colleague in your school community?
Yeah, I think I can share with that one. I think at West Thornton, small acts are seen all the time, but one thing that really kind of sticks in my mind from the day I joined is our interactions at the school gate. Our site supervisors are on the gate every morning. They're there, they're greeting the children, the families, the high fives, the good mornings, the little chats. They really kind of spread that positivity, lead with kindness. And I think those small interactions, those small hellos really change someone's day, and that positivity then spreads throughout the day. They support those key children where needed and have that positive influence. And then from that you have the ripple effect, you know, that positivity ripples across the school, other adults see that and those children really feel valued, and that started so early in the school day.
That's a lovely example.
And I was just going to say, just yesterday I was sent an email by one of our Senkos in one of our Medway schools to share some really great adaptive teaching practice from one of the Year 3 teachers, where they'd really used technology to enable that child to record their learning through oral rehearsal and then being able to use the QR code to add that into their book. And it was just a great example of how, for me, teachers are looking at how we can remove those barriers. It was something just so simple and straightforward that we've all got at our fingertips in schools now, and you know that is part of our strategic plan of looking at that technology and how we're using that. And I think it's great how we're then sharing that practice and sharing that knowledge and those examples amongst staff and across our partnership as well, which we do a lot of, and I think it's really great.
Thank you.
Can I come in there to say a bit more around inclusive leadership rather than what we kind of mean by that? Because I think we've been deliberate in using that word, the inclusive education leadership framework. And I think both of the examples from Lisa and Michael show that true inclusion lives in those tiniest interactions. It's not a policy, it's those daily active choices by everyone within an organisation, within a school, within a community that really makes the difference. And there's a really great bit in the beginning of the framework that talks about that really great schools are both inclusive and high achieving. And I really sit with that because, you know, we've spoken about the qualities that we want to see here: kindness, empathy, you know, inclusive leadership, seeking diverse perspectives, ensuring equity, fostering belonging, you know, all of these things that, you know, could potentially, when people are talking about high performance, be spoken about as, you know, soft. But that's not what we're talking about, because I see it every day in our schools where leaders, you know, everyone really balances that power and that love, that compassion, that care with the high expectations. And it's that kind of leadership where all feel valued, children, staff, all can reach their full potential. That is what bucks trends. that is why our schools are doing amazing things every day, getting the outcomes that we get. That is why a child who no one else believed in, comes to one of our schools and flourishes. And I've seen that at schools where children have gone around, families have gone around different schools and have been written off. But they've walked through our gates and been greeted with kindness and empathy and compassion, and they've been held to account, they've been challenged, because that's what, if you care about someone, that's what you need to do. But they've felt belonging and they have thrived because of that. And so I think for me, it's really important that when we're talking about leadership, we do have that word, because it is about everyone really fulfilling their potential and thriving, in that best way.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for those examples. I think in many ways the examples you've shared underpin everything that the Trust Awards are all about. And in your own schools today, you'll be hearing stories about those acts of kindness, and you'll be hearing stories of how the conversations that, whether it's an interaction at the gate or whether it's noticing a child in a classroom, how those behaviours have impacted so positively on individual children. And we know that this is what our trust is all about. And I like that reference, Amy, about it's not a compromise between high standards and those behaviours. It's all of it, isn't it? In many ways, through good quality and high quality relationships and interactions, it gives you the ability to push harder on accountability, doesn't it? You can say something to a child or a parent that you wouldn't be able to do if you didn't have that quality relationship.
Yeah.
So really good examples. So we're building on that, and what you're describing in some of the examples there, Lisa, particularly the meeting and greeting at the gate, is that ripple effect, or what we call a butterfly effect, how small actions can lead to big inconsequential changes. Can any of you share an example of how one person's inclusive leadership has spread across a team of people, and how you've noticed that? So, for example, if a visitor walked into your school today, what might they notice about the way that you value people as they come in? I just referenced that. I go to lots of schools where that doesn't happen. You walk into the building and it's, straight away it's that stern face, it's that have you parked your car in the right place type conversation rather than the welcome you get. So what would you say to that in terms of butterfly effect that you've seen, and how does that link to inclusion? Any reflections on that?
Yeah, I'll come with that one, Rob, if that's okay. So I think for me, when we look at our framework and we think about the Leaders Do section, and there's a strong part in there about how we can cultivate that trust and that well-being and build those relationships, because they are so absolutely key. And I think for me, Rob, you've absolutely hit the nail on the head there, that, the people in the office are the first people that anyone coming into our schools kind of see and get a feel for our vision, our ethos and our culture. And that does then, for me, ripple throughout the school, and about how we make sure we're really conscious about the language that we use. Because for me, that is the absolute fundamental foundations of how we build a good, strong, inclusive culture in our schools. The language that we use to describe the difference between a child kicking off versus a child being dysregulated really gives you that deeper understanding of what the child's experiencing at that time. So I think a strong element there is about the language that we use and making sure that that's modelled, and our behaviours are, those small interactions they're all learning points between adults and children and children to adults and so on. So I think for me it's really about how we do model that throughout the school, and that we're consistent in that approach, and looking at how we use our language to really kind of develop our...
And just to jump in on that, before anyone else comes in, that's not by accident, Michael, is it? I know that's not accidental. That's planned, structured work. So again, we're not talking about work that just happens because there's an individual person. We've supported people in the development of those common structures, the language that we use, ensuring that we notice those interactions and how staff can be supported to deliver that in a way that lands well with pupils. And I know you've been instrumental in that. So yeah, really appreciate you sharing that example.
Yeah. And I just sort of building on that a little bit, thinking about the work of our TAs as well. I've seen some really good examples where they've kind of taken a bit of a lead in a certain area and specialised in maybe speech and language or emotional regulation, and then their actions that then ripple throughout the school, where they're then sharing that expertise is really strong in how that kind of inclusive and that butterfly and ripple effect and sharing that
I think
expertise.
following on from that as well, PGP projects this year have really shown the effects. They've seen the butterfly effect in motion. Teams have had the freedom to innovate against the SDP, and it's really empowered leaderships. The teams have been made up of all members of staff, a variety of members of staff. It's really fostered that collaboration to drive improvement, created that inclusive culture, and actually new leaders have emerged from these teams and taken on ideas and run with projects. So it's been really nice to see the effect of those projects.
Just talking about teams, because obviously within the framework, the second stage of continuous team leadership, and just building on both what Michael and Lisa have said, to focus on building trust. That's how you build culture within a team and within a school. And to do that, it goes back to some of the statements in what leaders are. It's about admitting mistakes. It's about showing vulnerability. And there are so many sub-teams within a school. You've got the whole school team, but you've got the inclusion team, you've got the teaching team, you've got the Upkeep Stage 2 team, the attendance team. And if something happens, so for example, we have set systems in school where if we're looking at attendance, you drop down 90%, you're persistently absent, so we know we have systems where we send letters out and we do these sort of things. But actually, there might be times where a child's persistently absent, that's completely out of their control. Parents, for example, special educational needs, or to do with safeguarding. And I can think of one example where one child went down 90%, and the only reason they were off was because they had to be removed away from Croydon due to social care involvement. But a letter got sent in mistake, which obviously caused a bit of upset. And it's actually, whoever you are in that team, going, we missed this, let's learn from this. Because as soon as you can do that and use this framework to help guide you with that, it stops the blame game. Yeah. It eliminates failure or fear of failure, encourages everyone to be collaborative. So it kind of anchors the team. So everyone is part of that team, and it's about how you can use this framework to really build that trust and that culture.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for those reflections again. I mean, as you're talking, my mind's spinning with other thoughts and ideas, and I completely agree with everything you've all said. I think when I think back across my career, some of the best pieces of work that have ever happened in schools I've worked in have come because of individuals not waiting for permission to lead, but actually, taking an initiative, modelling those behaviours and values, and then others people seeing that and noticing that, and that creating a kind of dynamic where people feel more confident to also replicate that leadership in their own way. So I think that key message for me about leadership isn't about hierarchy. In fact, some of the best work has happened bottom up, never top down. And we know that internationally, the evidence tells us that schools that are strongest and systems in schools that are strongest, jurisdictions across the world, the best education systems all have strong collaborative models of leadership where it's not about the hierarchy, it's about the kind of values of the organisation and people, as you said, being given permission to, not waiting to be given permission to lead, and that culture of being able to make mistakes and those not being judged negatively. So last question or reflection from me. If a visitor walked into any of our schools today, what small thing would you like to see them, or would you expect them to see or notice, which proves that as a partnership, we're all trying to lead with inclusive behaviours in mind?
I think I'm going to use Michael's example from earlier and build on it, where you spoke about language that's being used. Because if culture is really inclusive across the school, every single person's vocabulary and language, tone and dance should mirror. And it's like unified, leveled language where those barriers between the amount of role you may have, they don't exist. So we all use the same vocabulary and we all use the same approach when we're discussing children, discussing personal growth, when we're managing challenging situations. And to do that within this framework, what I would expect to see in one of our schools or any of our schools is we challenge our personal biases, that we foster psychological safety. And if we can share that kind of equal language of respect, then actually we build that culture of adaptive practice, which isn't just in the classrooms of a child, it's literally from the school gates, the moment from beginning of the day to the end. And if we can do that, we level the playing field for our children. And that impacts not the child's well-being, but also the parents' well-being and our own well-being and our team's well-being, just by being approachable, active listening, and our vocabulary, our dance and our tone match that. And I think this framework gives you a really broken down approach of how that works and what that can look like to build that inclusive culture.
Yeah, yeah, I think the power of language, it just has the power of transforming cultures and like that ripple effect. I think walking through the doors as well, the language, how people are presenting themselves, speaking. I also think about kind of a bit of a quiet confidence in terms of how everyone in that building is going about their roles, because they are confident in what they're all working towards and driving towards, and that confidence in why they care. And we know as a partnership, we have one goal, one vision. It's transforming children's lives through collaboration, through partnership. And that's what I want to, that's what we want to see in action. And we were at a conference a few weeks ago, and a speaker was speaking about a high-performing Olympic gold rowing team, and she was talking about strategies that this team use to really drive themselves forwards and ensure that they have, they win gold. They're working towards their goal, and one of the things they really spoke about was having that shared vision, and every single person in that team having the confidence to know what they're doing and why they should care, and that role they're playing there. And I think that's so important. And I think through this framework, we all need to know that crucial part that we play. They were driving towards that Olympic goal there, and they had one person on their team, John, who drove the car, and he kind of took apart the boats and he put them on the trailer, and he was driving to and from competitions. And what they did is they made sure him and everyone in their team knew their part of driving towards that goal. So when they asked John, well, what are you doing here? His response was, I am driving towards an Olympic gold. He knew why his part mattered. He took care over that part of his role. And I think that's what we're going to see when we're walking through the doors. A bit of litters on the floor, we would pick it up. We know the why around that. We want excellent learning environments for our children. We're not walking past a bit of border, that's stapled down. And actually the underlying message in that is, well, everything that I'm doing here is because I'm working towards that goal of transforming children's lives. And I think there's a real quiet confidence in that, in knowing that crucial part you play, and the framework talks about that, how all of us align our values, the way we are, the things that we know, the things that we do, and how we align them with the vision and the values of the school, of the organisation. So for me, that's something really important that we all really need to make sure is there.
Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you, for your thoughts and contributions today in the conversation. We hope that resonates with you back in your schools, wherever you are, in terms of what you see, what you aspire for, what you hope for our children and communities. I want to say a few words of thank you and then sum up. I know that all of you have been working hard to refine this framework, and you've been road testing it. You've spoken about how it's being used in a kind of trial project this year. We'll be, from the autumn, launching the framework across the partnership, and we're also developing a range of other resources through a website, through a self-review tool, through resources that staff at every stage of their leadership journey will be able to access, in terms of being able to sort of learn more about different elements of the leadership you've spoken about. And we're also really keen to use the framework with other partners who might want to work with us to sort of road test how this can support their development, so other schools, and we're being requested by other organisations who are really interested to be part of that. So your work is having and will make a tremendous difference. We also know that there are others that are in your schools today that have been working with Amy, Lisa, Michael and Iman to develop the framework. So a huge thank you to all of you for the work that you've done and the feedback that you've given us on how the framework can be improved. We look forward to seeing it being implemented in schools. A few thoughts from me in terms of what's resonated. I suppose what's resonated most with me is, one, that sense of togetherness as a partnership. Because this is your framework, you've created it, you've written it. It's something that you've written in mind, thinking about every staff member. So I hope that when people get the chance to read it and absorb it and use it, it speaks to them. I'd love to see one day where we have a pupil leadership framework too, because I think that's something that is inspiring in the sense that, you know, in many, many ways, our children model leadership too, don't they? You see it in schools on a daily basis. I think that concept of not waiting to be told to lead, but understanding that everybody in our partnership is a leader. Yes. And I suppose, how do we ensure that through our interactions, everybody feels that they are leaders and that they feel part of that process? And then lastly, I just think what a wonderful opportunity we've got as a partnership to tell a story about how leadership in our schools makes a difference. And you said it, Amy, transforming children's lives through partnership and collaboration. I think it's an outstanding piece of work. And I hope that this conversation sets you up for a great day today. You will hear stories of amazing leadership in every award that's given to somebody. And you will know that it's about those quality relationships and interactions that lead to making a difference. So have a fantastic day, everybody, today. Enjoy listening to Amjad Ali as well. I mean, that's going to be inspiring. And have a great day, all of you. And hopefully this has been a good introduction to that. So let's give our panel, in whichever school you're at, a round of applause. We won't be able to hear it, but you will, and we'll pass it on. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Great.
much.